Hi, guys, it's me, Mr. Bertoch, your incredibly handsome science teacher. And in this video, we're going to talk about climate. In another video, I talk about the weather. Actually, in a couple of videos, I talk about the weather and what, pray tell, is the weather very quickly. If you want to get a full uh, explanation on weather, watch some of those videos. But as a quick just reminder, weather consists of the various events, short term events occurring outside relating to things like temperature and wind and precipitation and cloudiness and sunniness. Okay, they're the things that we experience in a moment that can change even within a few hours. You can go from sunny to cloudy to rainy very quickly when a weather event rolls through your town. So that is weather. And weather is different, though closely related, to climate. What is climate? What, pray tell, is this mystical thing called climate? So I'm sure you've heard that word, climate. It refers to the conditions in an area that are expected, the averages over a long period of time. And that is kind of nebulous. That's kind of left in the air, a long period of time. What does that mean? Often we calculate the climate based on a 30-year average, but that's not exactly a hard rule. It can be different. It can be 30 years, or some scientists might, for different reasons, take a shorter period of time, like 10 years, to calculate the climate. However, whether you calculate the climate based on 10 years or whether you do it based on 30, which is what is typically done, it doesn't really matter. It doesn't change the definition. Climate is a bunch of averages. So to figure out the climate in an area, we would collect data. Scientists love collecting data because data gives us a whole bunch of very important information. And when we have data, then we have something concrete that we can look at and find and identify patterns. And that's what we're looking for in climate. So we can collect data on the amount of wind that an area gets using an anemometer, which is a device that measures wind speeds. And we don't just measure the wind speed once and then we're like, okay, that's the wind in that area, because that's silly, because sometimes you have fast wind and sometimes it's calm skies and no kites are flying, and other times there's whooshing winds that carries kites up really high. So we need to gather averages over a long period of time. So we would measure the wind over many weeks and months and even years, and then look at that data and say, okay, on average, it's about this windy. Sometimes it's less windy, sometimes it's more windy, but on average, over many years, this is how windy this particular place is. And we do the same thing with rain. Precipitation, it could be rain or snow or sleet or hail, but with precipitation, with water falling down upon us, hitting our bald spots that you can't see very well, thankfully, in the video, making me sad every time a drop hits my bald spot. I'm like, what the heck? I'm not supposed to fill things right there. Anyway, I digress. But we measure, not with bald spots, but with little cups, how much rain falls in an area. And not just one day, because that could have been a stormy day or it could have been a dry day. And that's not giving me any useful information about the climate. That gives me information about the weather that day, but not about the climate. I need to know how much water falls on average over a long period of time in a particular area. If I'm going to know whether it's a wet area, a rainy area, an area that gets a lot of precipitation, there's that word again. Precipitation is a fancy, sciencey word that means how much water an area receives from the sky each year. Okay, so I measure the amount of precipitation in an area, and then I calculate an average. I say on average, this area gets this amount of water, and that is the amount of precipitation in that climate. And we do the same thing with average temperatures and any aspect of that we would associate with weather, we can also associate with climate, except that the climate, so the weather is the short term. That's what happened today or right now. Right now it's raining or right now it's sunny, whereas the climate is the average. On average, this area gets this many sunny days and this many cloudy, rainy days. On average, this area has an average temperature of whatever degrees in the summer and a low average temperature of whatever degrees. So it gives us important long-term information about an area. And climate, because they are calculated over a long period of time, 30 years typically, it's kind of reliable. It's kind of dependable. So if you're moving to an area and you're wondering, is this a warm area? Am I going to need like just a light jacket in the winter? Or is this a really cold area and I'm going to need like a heavy coat? What do I need to pack with me when I move to this area? You can look at the climate and you can get a pretty reasonable idea of what you can anticipate or expect in that area each winter, year after year after year, except that climates do change. Climates are always changing. They always have changed, and they always will change. Where I used to live, in a place, a mystical land, far, far away called Utah, when I was a kid, back in 1987, well, 1983 originally, and then 1987, there was flooding in Salt Lake. Salt Lake City, Utah is a desert, and we have this giant lake that will shock you to find out that the lake near Salt Lake City is called the Great Salt Lake. Maybe that's why the city's called Salt Lake City. Anyway, this lake, the Great Salt Lake in 1983, was getting out of control. It was getting humongous and expanding, going over its banks. And they were so concerned, I can remember as a little kid, that they invested like millions of dollars into these giant pumps to pump all the water out of the Great Salt Lake into the desert so that it wouldn't overflow. And it actually did overflow. And I can remember it going down the streets of Salt Lake City. Well, now, and it did that again in 1987, except not so bad. But now, in the year, whatever year it is, many, many years later, the Great Salt Lake is shriveling away. And it's just like a tiny fraction of what it used to be. The water levels have gone way, way down. And that's happened across the western United States, where it's gotten drier and drier and hotter. And in fact, the climate has been steadily changing for hundreds and even thousands of years ever since we had this event called the Ice Age, when temperatures were colder and it was wetter, and it's been gradually getting warmer and warmer, and over thousands of years, and more recently over the last 100 years, and drier and drier. So the climate, even though a 30-year average gives us a pretty good prediction, that doesn't mean it's going to stay that way. It can get drier and drier and drier in an area, or wetter and wetter and wetter, or warmer or colder, or whatever, depending on the trend in the direction that the climate is changing. Hi guys, thanks for watching my video. These rambling science videos where I go unscripted and just kind of barf up all the science knowledge out of my head are part of a series that go along with an online class that I teach, which you can sign up for if you go to handsomescienceteacher.com. I also have a whole bunch of free resources for homeschoolers. I have hundreds of articles on every topic that covers your entire science curriculum from 5th through 8th grade. I have online games and quizzes, all curated and written by this handsome guy, a science teacher with, well, three degrees, but 2 of them are in science. So it's targeted right to and directly to your science students. So sign up, subscribe to the channel, and I release lots of videos. Also, in addition to these ones, lots of little short videos that are like 2 minutes long that cover science topics. Those ones you don't get to see my handsome face, but they're still good videos, and they're much more targeted, and those ones are scripted, so you don't have to hear me like you are right now going blah blah blah. The end. Subscribe. Thank you. Goodbye.